Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here.
Welcome to the Love Pod, everyone. I'm your host today, Nathaniel, and I'm so pleased to be welcoming our special guest today, Kay McCready, who has a powerful story of resilience, who has become a resilience expert, dynamite consultant. That sounds so interesting to me, Kay, and a former frontline police officer of 28 years. So you've had a lot of personal challenges, and I love your energy meeting you. You were talking before the show about how you have this beautiful perspective now of everything you've gone to and why that's happened. And now you help individuals to strengthen their inner resilience and get real freedom in the body, mind, and helping them achieve calm, clarity, purpose. So many important words, especially in the era we're in where there's so much confusion and people are, the hype is all AI and, people are worried about losing their purpose. So I'm really pleased to welcome you to the show, Kay. I'd love to ask you to introduce yourself more and tell us more about why you do what you do.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel, and good evening. It's evening here because I'm in the UK. So, yeah, good evening to yourself and to all your listeners here as well. Thank you for inviting me on the show. And if I haven't met before, anybody who's watching this, as Nathaniel says, I am a resilience expert, a trauma practitioner, a speaker, breathwork facilitator, dynamite delegate, and I normally work with people to build that inner strength. That's both in their body first and in the mind, so that they can actually create a life that they love living. But obviously, I haven't always done that. And like you alluded to there, Nathaniel, that I was a police officer for 28 years. So it's easy to go back over my life and join all the dots of how I ended up where I am, which is amazing because I can actually do that. So just to give some perspective on that, really, I sort of started my life, very early years of my life, in quite a toxic environment. And when I was at school, I didn't really enjoy education very much. So when I left school, I didn't really have a career to go to, and I tried lots of different jobs. And in fact, I had 36 jobs before I actually joined the police. And when I joined the police, I joined as a special, so it's a volunteer police officer. And from that, I then applied full time because I just knew straight away that I just loved helping people. What I know now is probably a different reason to why I joined. Like I said, joining the dots. It was probably to do with my nervous system, but actually, I really want to help people. I loved it. I loved the excitement, the different aspects of the job where you were, not just going into a job every day. You were there to help people in their the moments when they really need that help. And I was really good at that. I was really good at helping people and being able to solve problems and all of those things. So I just loved it and absolutely fell into it. But back then, it was a very male dominated world. I was the only female on the shift at the time, probably only one of a couple in the whole station. So that in itself brought its own challenges because not only was I dealing with the public, but I was actually dealing with a lot of, issues within the system itself, in a male-dominated environment. So I was very much in that energy all of the time where I had to prove myself more so than I probably, would ever because I was in that male-dominated environment. So, I became very, very good, very, very efficient, always doing all of the things, putting everybody else before me. And I would show everybody, I'll show you I can do it no matter what. I always had that sort of attitude. Um, and then I'd been in the police for 2 years and then I had a son, excuse me. And my son was 3 years old and he was diagnosed with cancer. So at the time, I actually went into hospital with him, and we stayed in hospital for 6 months. And I truly believed that, we would bring him home, but he died. And so I didn't know what to do. There's no, even though I dealt with so many tragic things in life, death was quite common that I would deal with every day. But obviously, when it's on a personal level, it's completely different. And I didn't know how to manage that. I didn't know how to deal with what I was feeling. I didn't know how to express what I was feeling. I'd never really been shown when I was emotional as a child or showed any sort of, emotions or feelings. I would be told if you cry, I'll give you something to cry for, in a very strict sort of upbringing. So I didn't really know how to express my emotions at all. So I just did what I knew best. And that meant just going back to work. So within 4 weeks of my son dying, I went straight back to work because I was at home in a house where all of his toys were, all of his things were, and he wasn't. And, there's no instruction manual for what to do. I was literally, told goodbye from the hospital and that's it. So we actually, I went back to work within 4 weeks and I just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and did what I knew best. And I literally went out and solved everybody else's problems whilst avoiding my own because I didn't know what else to do. But then it got to the stage where I was drinking alcohol every night, and sometimes a bottle, sometimes 2 bottles of wine every night. I was taking sleeping tablets like they were going out of fashion because I was unable to fall asleep. And I just had this, what I can only describe as this constant noise in my head all the time, these thoughts. I called them like intrusive thoughts all of the time. I just couldn't stop them. I couldn't switch them off. Hence why I was taking sleeping tablets all the time so that I could sleep. Um, and that went on for quite a while. But the interesting thing was that I went to work and performed every single day. It doesn't matter if I was drinking alcohol or taking sleeping tablets. I would go to work and I would perform 100%, do everything I was supposed to do. And that became very normal for me. I was very good at performing, but hiding what was going on inside. And that just became very normal. But it didn't last too long. And after a few months, I ended up going on the sick with depression and, various other things. And one thing led to another. I ended up in hospital where I nearly, I tried to end my own life. And I always say there was no light bulb moment for me. There was no, you know, flicking a switch and me deciding, oh, this has happened to make me realize that I had to do something. But when I woke up in hospital, I'd been in intensive care for 3 days, woke up in hospital, and I just knew that I had to do something. So nobody was going to come along and take my pain away. Nobody was going to help me to express what I was feeling. Nobody was suddenly going to make my life better, and nobody was definitely going to bring my son back. So, nobody was going to do any of those things. And the way I was going and harming myself, that was emotionally and sometimes physically with drinking and things, that was just only going to end up, in one direction. So I started first of all with my diet. I started changing my diet because I wasn't even eating. So I started, changing my diet, started exercising, and then started listening to a motivational speaker of all the things. And then I suppose it just grew from there, really, a tiny step forward, just one step forward, sometimes 5 steps back, another step forward. And I always say if I knew, the length of time it took me to get from here to get to here was it was 10 years. But I didn't know the things then that I know now, and I didn't have the tools that I have now to be able to basically express my emotions and express how I feel and to build that resilience inside so that when challenges come along, that actually, I could manage them in a much better way. So I went back to work, eventually, started to get better, went back to work, and I've had many other things have happened since then. I've gone through bankruptcy, I came out as gay, like there's so many different things that have actually happened since then. But the way I've handled them has been a lot different because I've actually built that inner strength from the inside out. So that's a bit of a summary, really.
It's truly an incredible story, Kay. I mean, you've been through so much. A lot of people don't have that level of depth in terms of, having that level of loss. It brings to mind and heart. We were talking a little bit about heart before the show. you said you can look back on your life and connect the dots. Can you talk a little bit about your journey to getting there and how you've connected some of those dots? Because I feel like, for a lot of people to go through such a level of pain, it's very challenging. And I love that you've, taken that and become a resiliency expert. I think that, it's such a testament to inner growth to be able to do that. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about, that transition into what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think that the main thing for me has been my awareness now that what I understand about the nervous system and what I understand about, in the first 7 years of our life is when, our conscious mind hasn't even developed at that point. We're just subconsciously taking everything in all of the time, our environment, the things that are happening around us, even our self-image that somebody else creates for us is all developed within that first 7 years of our life. But obviously then I had no idea. So in the first 7 years of my life, bearing in mind I was in a toxic environment where I wasn't spoken to very nice. There was physical, emotional pain. So my nervous system developed very early on to actually, do a lot of the people pleasing. It learned adaptive ways to be able to manage situations, which is why when I look back at the career choice, that's why I was amazing as a police officer, because my nervous system had already created that capacity to deal with, fear, challenges, violence, all of those things. And the way I dealt with it more often than not was in by people pleasing, keep people calm and appease people and sort the challenges out and the problems and all of those things. So I now understand that's where, a lot of my challenges came from, is from having that nervous system and not having the capacity very early on in my life, and then creating those adaptive patterns, those adaptive outputs from my own nervous system that has allowed me to deal with challenges throughout my life. But as I got on through life, I realized that those things, those adaptive patterns are no longer working. So then it's about being able to repattern that and repattern your nervous system and actually build capacity within my nervous system to be able to deal with challenges as they come up, depending on the different level of challenges. And rather than, my nervous system, I had a lot of fight energy. So when I said earlier on, I used to, I'll show you, I'll prove to you. And again, you could put a 6 foot, you know, huge person in front of me who was really violent, and I would deal with that person, even if that meant physical, it was just how I dealt with it because I had that fight energy. Whereas times went on, I realized that I also, didn't always have fight energy. Sometimes I would fawn or freeze, and there's, the different levels of from the nervous system of how to manage in those times. And there'd be times when my nervous system would just shut me down completely, so I just would go to bed for days. But I didn't realize those things, and I don't think a lot of people do. They just think they're being lazy, or they think that, they can't be bothered, or they haven't got motivation, or all of those things, where for me, it all starts in the nervous system. And when people talk about mindset, because I did a lot of mindset work initially to start off with, which was great, and thinking positive and doing the affirmations and all of those things. But actually, that only got me to a certain level because I wasn't aware that the body is, it comes first for me. The nervous system works before anything else, and then the mindset takes over. So then initially I did the mindset work, then I did the body work, and then I've gone back to the mindset work after the body work. But it's just having an understanding and awareness, because I think most people don't have that awareness at all. We don't teach these things in school. There's no, there's no lessons on how to process your emotions, let's say. We're taught to squash them down, push them to one side, don't say how you're feeling. If you're angry, don't, you shouldn't be shouting. All of these things we're taught in society, which to me are not healthy in relation to creating that inner strength, that inner resilience within, so that when challenges come along, we do have resource within to be able to manage things that are going on outside of us.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in what you're sharing, Kay. And really, I like to think that we only really have two creative tools. Our mindset is one, but but the emotions that we have, and sometimes very often, like you said, they come at a time that's free verbal, they're formed, or they're in our subconscious, they're in the held patterns of the body. And not only do we not talk about it and teach it in society, it's also like we're not given a lot of space to just be with ourselves sometimes, in terms of even recognizing that there are underlying emotions that we are having. It might be guilt, it might be anxiety or shame that we can't always even feel until we start allowing ourselves to regulate the nervous system and feel what it's like to not be having those patterns. And that's the hero's journey. It's right. It's the journey of coming home to oneself. And I mean, I hear more and more people talk about nervous system regulation. I use somatic work in like the work that I do, helping people to connect with their soul purpose and align with a work that is really part of their intention. I feel like coming here to Earth, and it's a really deep conversation to have. And you're right. I feel like we need to have it more our in our families and our communities, and it would be a dream to see it actually be implemented in our education systems in a way that allowed that freedom of expression and not conformity to just going along with the herd, because we are such unique individual beings. So tell us more about the work that you're doing now, and maybe some stories of transformations and helping others go through challenges and develop this inner sense of resilience, and why this work is so meaningful for you.
Yeah. I mean, the work that I do now is very focused on body first. So a lot of the work I do is breath work, having experienced it myself. When I first when I first had all of the thoughts in my head and I couldn't get rid of those intrusive thoughts, which I think is really relevant because I think a lot of people experience that. When I was going through that and having all those intrusive thoughts, I was told to meditate. So I would sit there and try and meditate, and the thoughts would just going crazy, like a lot of people experience. So for me, it just did not work. And it was only when I found breath work, because for me, breath work is about connecting with your own energy first. So connect with our own energy. We activate our own energy. And once I started actually doing breath work and connected to me first and connected to source energy, then I was able to sit in meditation, because then my mind was already silenced. Because with the breath work that I do, you close down the prefrontal cortex and the monkey mind, it shuts it down. So then you're able to actually have that silence and have that peace, and then connect with your heart and find the peace within. I could never do that. So that's a lot of the work that I do with people now is, I always work on the body. I work with the nervous system. I take each person as an individual because every nervous system is different. So in my work, there's no one size fits all. I always work with the body first, push it a little bit, test it, see how much capacity it's got. Because quite often in the sessions, the nervous system, the body will just shut people down, and they almost go into this where they might feel like they're asleep or they've drifted off somewhere, but it's actually the nervous system shutting them down to, allow them to sit with that amount of activation because their system's not used to it. And then we push it a little bit further, and we go through, and I normally do 6 sessions with people. So I'll go through that process with people, creating that capacity, and then also giving them, breathwork practices to do, because again, if you think about it, the breath is the first thing that we do when we come into the world, is we take a breath, and it's the last thing we do when we leave. But how often do people actually think about their breathing in that space between? And they don't, because again, we're never taught about the breath. If you look at a baby and you watch a baby and the tummy rises and falls, we breathe the other way around. So a lot of people are actually breathing into their chest, and that's where the anxiety comes from. So they're breathing in the upper half of the body and they're activating, the fight or flight system within the nervous system. So again, it's about educating people sometimes around our own breath. That's such a powerful tool that we have within that people don't even use. people are not even using the tools that they have, the power that they have within, because they're not aware of that. So that's a lot of the work that I do. So I always do the body first, you know, with the breath work, create capacity, teach them how to, you know, use the breath to do different techniques, to be able to regulate, to reset, to activate if they need to. But more often than not, people can't remain still. So I find that people have that activated fight or flight energy as a very baseline, like I did. So the doctor would say to me, "Are you stressed?" I'm not stressed. And I honestly did not feel that I was stressed. I 100% did not believe I was, because that was normal for me. And then the doctor would say, "Well, what do you do for a living?" "Well, I'm a police officer." "What? And you're not stressed?" But it just become normal for me. And I see that with so many professionals that I work with now, is that their baseline stress level is so high that it's just become normal and they don't even know it. So again, it's just about working with all that, educating people around that, working with the body. Then once I've worked with the body, then we look at doing the mindset stuff, because I think, although I did it the other way around, I wasn't aware, but I think everything starts with the body first, and we've got to release so much that we've held on to from the past, from the nervous system, from the fascia, that's actually stored within our body. Did that answer your question? I sort of went round a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's brought up more questions for me too. I feel like, there definitely is a growing trend to recognize the importance of awareness. And, folks like Wim Hof, and we had a teacher we studied with, Dr. Sue Morter. Um, there's definitely a resurgence of people realizing that the importance of, that mind-body connection, and how important it is and really the power that we have within us when we're activated. um, I'm super curious about, because so many people who I talk to about meditation, I'm an active meditator, like daily. For me, I don't quite feel myself if I don't meditate. Many people complain about not being able to still thought, to sit and just listen to whether it's the breath or just to be in the body. And you presented like a really interesting breath technique that you say shuts that down. So I'm curious to know more about that. What particular technique, if it's something that you've discovered yourself, or if it has a name. And also, the other question that came to me was, uh, actually, let's start with that question, and I'll ask you a follow-up. Yeah.
So a lot of the breath work that I do, so I'm a 9D breathwork facilitator. I don't know if you've heard of 9D, but it's basically you have 9 different dimensions that are going through a headset like what you've got on now. So you've got your headset on, you've got
Mm,
binaural beats, you've got hypnosis, 432 hertz, you've got all of these different things going around in surround sound at the same time as you're breathing.
mm,
Now, there are different journeys for different you can either do activating ones or you can do calming ones. So if you're somebody who's really stressed, you don't want to be doing an activating one, you want to bring the nervous system down. So you'll do like a stress and anxiety one. So the breathing's completely different. And a lot of the breathing is, where it's a longer breath on the way out, because then
mhm,
you're telling the nervous system that you can relax and calm down and chill. So it's just different breathing techniques that you go through at the time. But actually, when we do the activating work, so that's where we get the prefrontal cortex shuts down, because what we're doing is we're activating, and it can be really challenging technique for people, because I always say to people, you put one hand on your tummy and one hand on your chest, and normally when people breathe in, the chest comes up. But what we do during this technique is, when we breathe in, the tummy comes out, and then we bring it up to the chest. So it's like a tummy, chest, and release. It's in a 3. So it's, and you're doing that the whole time through a full
mm.
hour journey. And
Okay.
obviously what that's doing is it's shutting down the prefrontal cortex. Then you've got all the subliminal messages, you've got hypnosis, all of these different things going in at the same time, which are accessing the subconscious mind, which then the affirmations, the subliminals, all of those things are going in at the same time. But it's
Mm,
incredible when you see like the release from the body is just unbelievable. I have seen some crazy things that people do. And when I tell them afterwards, they have no idea because the
Wow.
body will just do what it needs to do. We don't need to do anything. All we need to do is breathe, and the
Mm.
body will release. Now, I don't know if you've done sort of breathwork journeys yourself, but the body can release in shaking, crying, arms levitating, all sorts of different things. And it's absolutely incredible. So, so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah, it's actually, I just was introduced. There's a school community owner that I was on a networking call with, and he calls it 9D breath flow. He doesn't like calling it breath work. He likes calling it flow because everyone's so
Yeah,
focused on, but so it's the second time in like maybe 3 or 4 days that I've heard of it. So it's definitely synchronistic for me. I definitely have had probably most of my awakening experience has in some way been connected to the breath. And I really like, you know, the breath is really, there's so much depth in the breath, just like the heartbeat. I feel like there are these universal things that connect us all as human beings. And I mean, it can be very easy. The mind likes to, like compartmentalize or just judge things as, oh, it's boring, it's just in and out and in and out. But there's that subtle pause at the top of the inhale, the exhale. There's just the state change and state mastery that the breath can lead us into, like you're saying, for a long journey like that with the activated breath. It's so interesting, and I feel like masters have spent lifetimes just sharing this with humanity. I'm curious because, at the beginning of the conversation, you were talking about connecting those dots, and almost background is in Indigenous wellness. And, yeah, I've had a lot of different experiences in different circles and different ceremonies and on the land, a lot of work there. And I've had some profound experiences show me like there's much more to this reality than we're taught or talked about commonly. Um, and I'm wondering your perspective of the time we are in, because it sounds like you've gotten a really good connection to yourself, and you must doing this kind of work. I know, and I would imagine for you, it brings you to a greater understanding of who you really are. I'm wondering what dots you see connecting in terms of a vision for our world, or what you see emerging during these times.
Yeah, I think that, probably very much like you, I believe that we all are here for a purpose. And I don't think your purpose ever just, knocks on your door and says, here I am, here's my purpose, because that's what everybody thinks. Like, if I can only just find that purpose. But I also believe that we've had past lives, and I almost see it as having that conversation at the, I don't know if you've heard of the cosmic bus stop, where you stood there beforehand and you all having a conversation about what the lessons are that you need to learn before you come, when you come here onto this part of the journey. And that we actually agreed to whatever's happened. And sometimes that's a big challenge to accept that. If I think about my life and the challenges that I've had to go through, especially my son dying, and I think, did I really agree to that? Did I really? But actually, the understanding that I have is that I did. That's my belief, that I had to go through these things to be able to be part of the bigger mission, to be part of something greater than me, to be, you know, the voice, the vessel for, spirit, universal energy, to actually allow me to be part of the mission to help other people. And sometimes, like I say, when you think about the things you have been through, it's hard to take sometimes, but I know that there's a bigger purpose, that it's more than me. I know that we're all connected, and this is just my tiny little part in humanity to actually, help other people see that even in the biggest challenges, even in the darkest times in life, there is always some light, always. And, if I've been through some terrible times and didn't believe there was light, but actually, if people can look at me now and see, well, if I've been through this, maybe there is just that glimmer of hope for them, that actually no matter what happens in life, there's always a way. There's always a way to change your perspective, create safety in your body, and keep moving forward. And like I say, sometimes that might mean going back, but we have so many choices, I think, so many choices in life about what we do, what we create, who we are, who we show up as, how we love others, how, all of those things. So I think that for me, I know that I'm here for something more than just me. It's not about me, it's about something else in the world.
I think it's really powerful listening to you, Kay. And what I hear too is, when you talk about resilience, I realize like I feel like it's a very limited way of looking at resilience. Like you just get through something and you're okay. But when you look at resilience as you go through something and you grow to be of service on a new level, to see that you're here for a greater purpose than just yourself, and that a lot of these challenges that you take on from a, a soulful place are really to be of service to humankind and to our world in a very expansive way. And I think that's really beautiful. So much of what you said resonates with me because I've obsessed about the interconnection of life for, most of my life. And I really do feel like, Mother Earth, she is a need for us to return to alignment in our roles as stewards with one another, and to find that way that we can be in harmony, so that we can all flourish and thrive together. And I feel like, love is always the magic ingredient. It seems to be the answer to all the questions. And to be able to preserve or to even grow into a new sense of love, having gone through something as difficult as losing a baby, a baby boy. I, when you were telling the story, I have a 2 year young little girl, and I can't even imagine how devastating that would be. We love her with all of our hearts, and I feel like um, what you speak to of is also the remembrance that we are eternal beings, that we give one another opportunities to go through certain vicissitudes and challenges to experience the wholeness of ourselves. And I think of some of the challenges that I've had. I feel like I've dealt with a lot of bullies in different ways, and I've dealt with a lot of like rejection in terms of my own journey, and these have fostered greater compassion for me and allowed me to serve in different ways. So, anyways, I just appreciate you being an advocate for that deeper conversation. And yeah, that soul. It was from Dr. Sue Morter that I first heard that term, the cosmic bus stop, and I think it's so important to recognize that almost every master has told us this, that we are personally responsible for the circumstances, and our consciousness is what's co-creating them. So it's up to us to master them. I think we'd be foolish to think that we're going to be saved by someone outside of ourselves and not have to take responsibility. I mean, heaven can't be a bunch of people waiting in line to talk to one being like Jesus and asking for what you want. I mean, it wouldn't work, right? And everyone's bickering in a line. Like we all have to be that embodiment of the unique expression of divine that we are, I believe, in our heart and soul. And this is like earth is a beautiful place of forging that character as we bump into ego and all the other things that we are faced with in this world. So on that note, what is your higher vision for our world? Okay.
That part of my mission is to impact other people, to bring awareness to them. That's it, to bring awareness to other people that they have got a choice, that they can make a different choice, that they can have a different life. If you look at how we end up like we are, it's all through conditioning. It's all through things that are outside of ourselves. And I think if we can just get people back to being in the body, like you say, connecting with love level of vibrational energy, that's the highest level of energy. So if we can bring people back to that, to live within that love as opposed to hate, and we can actually start looking at ourselves instead of outside ourselves, because everything is within. And nothing happens outside of our mind. We just create it all of the stories, all of the, circumstances, the perceptions, all of those things. We just create them all in the mind. And I think the more awareness we can bring to other people that life doesn't have to be full of challenges and struggles and problems. We can just go within sometimes, just go within and connect with us, with our energy, with our soul purpose, with, the universe, with the trees, with the sea, with like all of those things, that we don't need anything else. We don't need anything else.
I so agree with you. And, I envision a world where I believe as when we are in our master expression, like when we are fully embodied of who we really are, we all have such unique gifts to share with one another. So we don't need to, I feel like a lot of the conditioning that we go through, especially through education, is about, um, you know, becoming an achiever, becoming someone who carries the weight yourself and works in isolation. And I feel like humankind is a beautiful social uh, organism. I like to see it as it's one beautiful tapestry of all these beautiful, unique individuals, and yet so many of us are so hard on ourselves. How can we create a world when we don't have that love within ourselves and are able to share it? So I agree with you. Like the spirit name that carries me is Undakihin, and in Anishinaabe Aki means land. And so the way that I understand my name means that guides me is a keeper of the land. So it's my role to be a steward. And I, one of the ways that I like to do that is to also bring awareness to people to share that we are literally, if you think about it, everything that we've eaten comes from Mother Earth, comes from the land. It's formed our body, and we've grown from a seed and an egg. And so when we see ourselves as connected and as body is an expression of the land, when we take care of it and we become stewards of the land and then our external environments that we're in, there really isn't any separation. I feel like that will just naturally lead to more harmony and also like more playful states of being, more caring states of being. And it's just a different perspective, right? Because it's so easy for the ego to identify as the body or to identify as the mind. And when someone might have their first experience like you had with the mind prefrontal cortex shutting down, and all of a sudden you have space to just be, that can be scary for some people, especially if they identify as the incessant thoughts that are constantly streaming forth, and all of a sudden there's space. It's like, whoa, well, then who am I if I'm not all the thoughts I was thinking? So it's like for a lot of people that you work with, I would imagine it's a gradual journey. Like you say, you work with people usually over 6 sessions. Do you want to talk a little bit about the journey that people go through when they work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to acknowledge what you said there about being a keeper and being connected and all those things. I mean, I'm sure we could have these conversations all night. I really feel a connection with you actually, which is really, really nice. Um, and yeah, and I remember also when you said about finding that space, like I remember the first time I found that space, but for me it was incredible that I had silence. And it's almost like you can imagine being in a galaxy where it's just dark but light and pure silence, like not even being able to hear my own heartbeat. Pure silence is just incredible, like one of the best places to be. Where now I can go there really quickly, like you say, through meditation. It's really, really quickly. And for anybody who doesn't do breath work or meditation, like please try it. And even getting out in nature and connecting to the trees and hugging the trees. And I do cold water therapy, so I swim in the sea, and all of those different things, which are all part of building that resilience for me, all part of it, because it's not just about the body and the mind, it's about what you eat. You were saying about the things that you eat. It's about what you feed your mind, what you feed your body, the habit, all of those different things that you have. It's all about having really good habits and beliefs so that we just build on those all the time, and they become normal and they become your base level. And once they're your baseline and base level, then you're in a good place. Because again, for me, life's about having fun and enjoying it and being happy and doing things that you love. I often ask people at the very beginning of the sessions that I run, I ask people, what do they love doing? What are their goals? So many people don't know what their goals are whatsoever. They've probably never been asked. And that's one of the biggest questions that I find people really struggle with, because they want to offload and tell me all of the things that they don't want in life, but they actually have no clue at all. If you take away all the labels, take away all the roles, all the hats, all of those things, they don't know who they are underneath all of those. They're just, the mum, the dad, the police officer, the, daughters, whatever, all of those different labels. But underneath that, they don't know who they are. They don't know, like, that we're all energy. They don't understand any of those things. And so when it comes to asking what they like doing and what they love exploring, like, what lights you up? Don't really know. And then I'll say to people, what's been the best part of your day? And they're like, oh, and then they tell you about the problem at work, or it really highlights the fact that a lot of society are focusing on the problems and the challenges and the struggles, and that's in the forefront of the mind all of the time. And when you switch it up and ask people a question about something good, they really struggle with it. What do you want to achieve? What are you here for? What do you, what lights you up? If you had a free day now, what would you go and do? Like, get outside, do things. I mean, I love dancing. I love so many different things, But even just in the beginning of sessions, asking people those questions is really enlightening, because people then soon very quickly realize that they do have a scarcity mindset. And again, that's not their problem as such. It's not, it's about having compassion with people and understanding that they don't know any different to what they know, and the place that they're at is where they're at. And if we can only do what we're aware of in the first place. But even just bringing that awareness to people, actually, do you realize that every time I ask you, a question, you bring it back to the problem or the negative or the scarcity mindset. And when I ask about your goals, you don't actually have any idea. You just tell me all the things that you don't want. So even just going through some of those things at the beginning of the sessions before we even get going into the body, just actually getting an understanding of people and what they're actually challenged with. And then, as I say, I normally work with the nervous system first of all. So in the first session, I normally do some different tests to see how their body responds, how their nervous system responds, how their breathing is, get them to, in the first couple of weeks, actually practice breathing properly so that it's going to benefit them. And then we'll get into the deeper work. Sometimes people might take 6 sessions and not even be able to get into any of the deeper work, because they just don't have the capacity. So for me, that's why I always say I always start with 6 sessions, and then we see after that what happens and where we go. Some people never do any more than 6 sessions, and a lot of the people I work with are high achievers, so they have very high pressure jobs. Again, I work with a lot of women who are in male dominated environments where they feel that added pressure anyway, that they feel that they don't belong in rooms that they're actually in, or that's how they perceive it. That's their perception, that actually I never feel welcome in here. I feel like I'm, shouldn't really be in here. I feel like people look down at me, all of these different things. But when you actually go to the nervous system, then the nervous system can't hold any of that. First of all, they don't have, when you look at the self-image, their self-image is created in the nervous system from very, very early on. And it's probably from a parent who might have told them, like my dad used to call me thick all the time and say, you're thick, you're stupid, all these things. So I already believed early on that I would never achieve anything. If I look at my school reports, they were all, Kay looks out of the window all the time. Isn't it interesting? Because if we'd have harnessed that, we'd get people to visualize and use their creative energy. But actually, it's shut down in schools. They're looking out the window. It's seen as a negative. But when you even just looking at those things, and when you've got an understanding of how all the patterns are created, then you can look at how you're going to change them. So these women and men who are coming to me, are quite often at the point where when they first come in to work with me, quite often they just want to cry straight away, which is interesting because they can't hold it in anymore. A particular woman I've been working with, very high achiever, and she'd been burnt out before. She'd been in that burnout stage, and this time she recognized it though. So she came to me and said, "I recognize where I'm at." And she described it as her arm, and she said, "Last time when I burnt out, I was all the way up to here with the stress. That was it." She said, "And right now I'm up to here." So she recognized that she was on the way to burnout, which was really good. But actually, when people come in and they cry, I think it actually surprises them quite a lot because once they're able to release some of that emotion that's been bubbling and squashed down, it just creates that immediate relief for people without having to talk about it. Because for years when I went to see counselors, and I always say there's a great place for counsellors, but I would go and sit with a counsellor and we would talk about my childhood and talk about the death of my son and talk about all these things. And we would just repeat the same things over and over again. What I know now with how our conscious mind works and our subconscious mind and our limiting beliefs and all those things, I'm just regurgitating the same stuff and bringing it up, and there's no moving forward. In the sessions with the breath work, yes, we talk a little bit about some of the challenges, but we don't go in and drag it all up. We just let the body do what it needs to do because the body knows. It knows what to do.
I, I think it's so powerful what you're saying and so important, because healing doesn't need to take years of talk therapy. It can happen because the body does know how to heal, and especially when we allow that source of our being to come pour in. And I'd be willing to guess, Kay, that because of all the work that you've done in creating that space of calm and acceptance, when people come into your energetic field, that's what allows them the safety to finally let go of that holding that they've been doing, right? So that's, I mean, it to me, it's a testament of how valuable. Someone asked me this: do you know how valuable it is to have an enlightened person in a community or a enlightened teacher? And to me, I look at enlightenment as a gradual spectrum. Like, for those of us doing this inner work, we're all at different levels functionally of that. We are all different. We've cultivated certain gifts in different ways, and we can be of service to people who are still coming up on that journey. And it's a real gift to be around people who are doing that work and are creating those spaces of peace in our world. Knowing that whatever you're going through, you can choose, like as you were saying, you can choose what you're focusing on. You can process it, and you can let it out of the body. I remembered the other question that I had, because as you were talking about raising your baseline of habits and consciousness, essentially, I know there's this universal problem. It was described in the book called Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and he calls it the upper limit problem. So we have this thermostat at the bottom that we usually we'll correct if we go, but we also have an upper thermostat. If we start feeling too good or having too much abundance in our life, subconsciously we will often find ways of sabotaging that. We'll start an argument, or we'll do something silly, gamble or whatever. How does this work help people expand that ceiling in your experience? Yeah, what do you think about what I'm sharing?
Yeah, I suppose for me, that's when it comes down to the mindset side of it as well. Nervous system as well for creating that capacity to, say, money as an example. I'd always had a money paradigm, always. I lived in quite poor conditions when I was younger. The money wasn't there. I was always told money wouldn't grow on trees. All of those different scarcity things around money. So I've always grown up with that throughout my life. And then I also lost a business. So I went bankrupt as well. So that just reinforced. And like I say, before I knew about how paradigms work and how the mind works and all of those different things, I would have just thought that that's just how life is. That's all I'm going to get in life. I'm never going to get past this, being able to make this amount of money and being able to do this. And that's just my lot in life. But actually, I understand now that that's from a nervous system as well, because my nervous system feels under threat. I'm unable to hold that, have that money and keep it and believe that that's something that's positive for me, because my nervous system remembers straight away all the previous times when money was a threat, and straight away my fight or flight's activated, so my nervous system kicks straight back in and I'm unable to hold that. So again, it's just about building capacity with that and understanding as well that a lot of the work that I do now is living from the wish fulfilled. So believe it's already happened, see it's already happened. If you can't see it in your mind, you're never going to hold it in your hands. You've got to believe, because our thoughts come in images. So you've got to have an image for what you want in your future. You've got to have an image of who you are, who you show up as. We talk about the self-image and where the self-image was created, where you've got to look at your self-image and decide, well, who do I want to be? Who do I need to be? Who do I need to live as? Who do I need to show up as every day? If I was my best self, the very best self of me, what does that look like? Who do I need to be around? Who are the people I need to speak to? How do I need to speak? How do I need to dress? What do I want to look like? All of those different things. And we've got to live that as if that is us, So again, it's about doing a lot of the mindset work around the self-image, around and doing the nervous system work as well. And when you do both, then you can start to hold that money when it comes to lack, when it comes to money mindset. So again, it's just a combination of all of the things together.
Yeah, so beautiful. And it's really mastery, right? It's being intentional with where we're focusing and the choices we're making, which until you really deal with the nervous system dysregulation, it's very difficult to do that, right? Because people have inner conflicts. But I really appreciate what you're saying about dealing with that level first, dealing with the body, making it, putting it in a place where it can get calm and at peace, so you can allow those other um, for lack of better words, reprogramming or input to come in that allows you to envision life and live. I love that. Living wish fulfilled. I think that's so important. I mean, it is the, what people talk about, the secret. It's so many people chase outcomes thinking that they will, have what they want, which is really what people want, is usually the feeling associated with the wealth or the achievement. And if we can start from that paradigm of feeling that, being it in the world, we do achieve those things, then all of a sudden it takes on a brighter dimension, because we can actually appreciate it and we're not chasing the next thing because, the $1 million wasn't enough. Now I need the $10 million. Or I was literally listening to a billionaire saying, I'm not going to be able to relax until I have $100 million. And I'm like, okay, like you could relax now. So I think it's there's a lot of important wisdom in what you shared. Okay, I you know there's so much here. Like you said, we could probably talk for days about these things. I feel like there's like really a lot of depth in these conversations. It's really about awakening to who we really are. What what is your when you're stepping into your life as the conscious co-creator that you are, what is what does a day in the life look like for you, for setting, like, do you have like a rising ritual that you do? Do you like practice gratitude through your day? What does life look like for you? Okay.
So my life is very, very structured. So I normally I wake up at 5:30, normally around about that time on a morning. Um, so one of the first things I do before I even get out of bed, I always say thank you. That's just something I do. Thank you for another day. Because I truly believe that I'm lucky to wake up every day, because like I say, some people don't. So for me, it's thank you. Thank you for waking up. I always get my headphones straight away and I do breath work every single day without fail. So I'll do a 10-minute breath work practice, which again just activates my own energy. Once I've done that 10-minute breathwork practice, I'll then go into a silent meditation. So I'll do a silent meditation for 10 minutes. And then I do a 10-minute self-image meditation as well. So it's like a visualization, which I do. So I do that every morning. And then I do study. So I study different, I only have a couple of books, but I do study. The Power of Awareness is the one that I study. more than anything. So I study that in the morning again, just educate myself, like studying to understand, studying to, when I first started 2 years ago, actually studying books like The Power of Awareness, and I read them and they were just, I didn't understand them. They were just so complicated. But now I actually break them down. I've got all the different sections highlighted and all those sorts of things. So that's what I do first thing. Then I get up and I do 30 minutes cardio, fasted cardio. So again, that's just on treadmill that I've got in the house, fasted cardio. Then I have my breakfast, and then my working day starts, whatever that is, whether I'm going with clients, whether I'm going to networking events, whether I'm, going to walk the dog in the beach. Every Thursday, my wife and I have date day. And would you believe you've interrupted my date day? So every
My
Thursday,
apologies.
I said yes.
Okay.
But every Thursday we have day, like a whole day. So not just on night
Wow.
time. We go for a Thai massage, go to the beach, I'll go and swim in waterfalls, do, whatever we want to do. We always have coffee and cake every Thursday. So again, that's really important for us, for our connection to each other, connection to ourselves. We might do some meditation or whatever. And then I also go to the gym 3 times a week as well. So again, I, physically work out with weights, so I do weight training. My diet, I eat 5 times a day. So again,
Wow.
very, very structured. I also take lots of supplements, lots of vitamins. Like, I do all of the things. I don't drink alcohol. I go dancing 3 times a week. I swim in the sea. Like I do lots of things that I actually
Mm.
love that light me up. So that's pretty much my schedule. And sometimes I might work.
I think it's awesome. I really love the idea of a date day, like having a whole day.
Yeah.
I feel like Julia and I haven't had many times just with ourselves, with a little girl who's super active, and we are choosing to not institutionalize her at all, like no daycare or anything. So it's a lot. We will switch her off. Sometimes she'll be on the podcast and I'll take care of her, and other times, a lot of the time she's with Julia. I think it's really beautiful. And thank you for sharing your structure. I'm sure that it's going to inspire some people to become more intentional with the way that they design their life. And at the end of the day, that's so important to be in the zone. Do that are important, but are not necessarily going to no one's going to force us to do those things. So before we end here, Kay, I'm just wondering if you can share with people the best way of connecting with you, people who are interested in journeying with you, doing that work.
Yeah. You can find me on all the platforms, all the usual platforms. So, and I'm on them all as Kay McCready Coaching. So they're all the same across the board: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I think I've even got a TikTok channel, but please don't go there.
That's awesome.
But
Well,
yeah, if anybody wants to connect with me, please feel free to reach out.
okay. And we'll certainly put all those in the show notes. I would like to ask you one more inspired question, Kay. So if you had a megaphone, a magic megaphone, let's say, and you could talk to everyone in the world and everyone could hear you, what would you share?
What I would share is that you have to believe in yourself. Stop focusing on, should I get my microphone? Stop focusing on the outside world and go within.
Hmm.
Focus on you, because actually you are the most powerful person. There is only one of you in the whole world. You are unique, you are special, you've been given a gift. You are perfect exactly as you are. You just need to really, really connect with you, who you are. Realize that actually we're just love. We're just love. We're energy. We're vibrating. And we just need to bring that energy up so it's at the highest level possible. And you can be and have and achieve absolutely anything that you want in life, because I'm living proof.
You have such a wonderful presence and just a really energizing energy. So thank you for being just such a bright, beautiful light in our world, Kay. It's really awesome meeting you. I'd love to invite you to our school community. It's a place where you can connect with people in a beautiful way. So you're always welcome there. And yeah, I just really feel really privileged
meeting you and connecting with you, and it's inspiring work that you're doing. So thanks for being of service to not only to the individuals you serve, because I know that when we do this kind of deep work, the people we impact go and impact other people because we ignite one another. So it's sending important ripples in the world. So thanks for being of service in all the loving ways that I know you are.
And thank you for being of service too and shining your light in the world as well. Because like I say, I can feel that connection and that's really powerful, even though I've never met you, but I feel connected to you. So that's really special in itself.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing the work that you're doing and the work that Julia's doing as well. It's really important.
Thank you so much, Kay. All right, well, with that, I'm gonna invite our daughter Luciana with a little closing video. It's still a little wintry. We haven't created oh, maybe Julia has. She's brought back the other one. Okay, yes. So I'm gonna invite Luciana now to say thanks for watching, and to all of our listeners, blessings and highest wishes to all of you, and be sure to connect with Kay on all our social media channels. All right. Thank you so much again, Kay. Is there anything else you want to share before we go?
No, thank you
Okay.
very much. You've got
Thank
beautiful
you.
energy. I can feel
Thank
it.
you so much. You as well. Okay,
Take care.
blessings.
Thanks for watching. You say ciao ciao.
Bye.
I love you so much.